Yo, call my arms broken the way you stroking. Everybody wants to welcome back to the Games Kids today, and only today, we are here, that's right, with the official re-review of Sonic Frontiers. This game is almost a year old. We have had all the updates and DLC as far as we know. I think for the most part, at least DLC is update. Could they, launch some patches or something at some point? Maybe, but for the most part, the game is fully complete and done. So I thought it makes sense now that we have everything to sit down and really re-review the game, because these updates not only added content, but they sort of fixed some things and changed things objectively to the base game that make it an overall better experience. These updates weren't just kind of things that were on separate menus somewhere, but for the most part, they were things that were good additions to the game, that things that needed it. And I think overall, objectively, we're going to get into it, but Sonic Frontiers is a much better game today than it was 1 year ago. So I'm going to try to be thorough with this review and sort of give each, segment its conversation, right? Starting with what I think is a pretty important part of this is the story, right? Sonic stories for a long time have been backed into a joke corner, right? I think in the 2010s, I believe it was like Pontac or something that took over. For those of you that don't know, these were writers for shit like Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures and Happy Tree Friends, and really just people that did not really understand the franchise. Now, obviously, this is Sega's fault for hiring them, so not really giving them an excuse, but they had given the role to somebody who didn't really understand the series. I'm pretty sure the dude was pretty open about saying, yeah, no, we don't need to know about all that stuff. It's kind of like what we have been given guidelines for. So we were in a pretty shitty path in the 2010 story-wise. To be objectively back to a story, right, by Sonic Team and Ian Flynn was such a breath of fresh air. We've had the story of, the gang that gets lost into an island, which at first you think is very simple, right? But there's something so isolating about it, and it almost starts very haunting, right? Sonic's just alone on these islands, and he's just trying to find answers, right? And he finds Amy. On the next island, he finds Knuckles. The one after that, he finds Tails, and he's finding his friends, but throughout each island, he's sort of alone, and all he really has is the environment. What's so nice about the story is it really is about discovery, right? It's a lot about, discovering what happened with the ancients, right? This ancient civilization that, this island was inhabited by in the past, right? So you're finding out a lot about them, and the way you're finding that out is by talking, to, for example, Amy on Kronos, who is telling you now, she can sort of feel the spirits of, the land, and also just how, you sort of get to form a relationship with each of these characters again, because even these characters have been backseated for a while, like Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, and a lot of the cast. And I think the reason why they chose the main three to sort of, bring back was because I think they needed that. I think they needed new moments, right? Starting with Amy, for example, I felt like Amy's story was a much better character, right? I did complain a little bit that I think in Kronos she is a little too sad. Obviously, I understand why. She's been lost in cyberspace. She's stuck somewhere she doesn't understand. She's trying to help these Cocos, right? Which, are like the souls of these lost ancients, trying to bring them together, right? So she's dealing with a lot, as well as the fact that, she is growing up and she's starting to understand more of what she wants in this world. And that really is to, sort of just help the world. She just wants to make the world a better place, and she has her moments with Sonic. I think it's really endearing. She is no longer just like, hey, Sonic, help me. And obviously, while I adore chaotic Amy, I think she's obviously very cool, and you see a lot of that character highlighted in games like Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. I think, the way she's portrayed here is pretty solid. And in fact, in the new, the added story towards the end, and we're honest, where she has some more dialogue, I love seeing her more aggressive side, where she's saying I'm going to stop this no matter what, or when she's getting cyber corrupted, you get a bit of that, a bit more of an angry side of Amy, which I think is just really cool to just see again, and I think it stuff like that is fire for me, right? And then you go to Knuckles, and I think Knuckles still stands out as my favorite character throughout this, right? Because you have Knuckles on Ares Island, and obviously you're trying to do the objectives on the island to free him, right? And he eventually gets to the point where he's talking about the civilization he's in, and I think he relates to it a lot, obviously, as someone who was protecting something. He was part of a tribe before, right? And he understands the ideas of this and being alone with it. Obviously he never grew up with that tribe, but you get to that moment, that a lot of people point out and love, that moment where he sits down with Sonic, he's saying yo, man, I am alone. There's no one like me out there. And then having those character moments, even, the obviously the funny Riz ones where like they're just giving each other these funny stares and they clearly understand each other as friends. I find that stuff is hella cute. And I really love just, again, how Knuckles was portrayed. And even how, like some of the areas would remind him of, Angel Island where he met Sonic, right? Even though, that was a very random shot to bring back. I still just love little things like that. And another part, obviously, of this story is just how it ties the series together, right? I know a lot of people like to make fun of the game sometimes a little bit for how it's just like, here's reference to this, here's reference to this, but I think we needed that. I think we needed a game that sort of, told us like, hey, what happened before is important. And I think it's to, and people, again, don't like hearing this, but it's to lay a foundation, right? And I think it's important to do that because we've had a lack of that. Nothing has felt like it's mattered in Sonic for a long time. So even little stuff like Sonic walking around and be like, oh man, these, waterfalls remind me of the Mystic Ruins, right? Or AB talking about, past adventures they've had, or Tails even on Chaos being like, yeah, I got my ass beat by Infinite, and the Deadly Six. And, even if Tails didn't act like that because of those games happened and they were like that. So to sort of recontextualize it and give more character to Tails, understanding that even for him, right, he's like, I don't want to, be player 2, basically, right? I want to go on and do my own journeys, but obviously we're still best friends. I still care about you, right? Knuckles being like, hey, maybe I should also go, get out of this island that I'm just protecting a rock on and should go around, right? But also understand that he has friends. So little stuff like that is fine. Obviously, with Eggman, we have a mega plot line, and that is him and Sage, right? The whole Sage Eggman plot is so fascinating. In fact, Sage is one of the best character additions, I think, to the game overall, right? I think she is, this character that's invented by Eggman by activating Cyberspace. She's trying to stop Sonic throughout the game, but you start to see also how she starts to keep hearing conversations Sonic is having with the others, and she sort of understands like, this dude isn't really evil, he's just kind of persistent. She's even seeing Tails and Knuckles and Amy, and to the point where, she tells Eggman like, hey, like, I think if you guys actually work together, you could, you could be incredible, you could be crazy, and Eggman obviously being a bit like, no. But I do again love how Eggman is exemplified a bit more, right? How he's like, hey man, I do respect Sonic even if I don't like him, and I love little stuff like that. And even just the Eggman logs that you get from fishing where he's talking about the Babylonians, or he's talking about, Maria even being like, I wonder how Maria was like, and how he is getting closer to Sage being like, damn, I feel like this is my daughter. It's just like all the story stuff is so fire, to the point where obviously we have the end of the game, which I think in the original sort of ends very abruptly. Like, okay, Sage dies in the original, and that's a very sad moment for Eggman, but it feels very quick, whereas, you get to the update version of it, the new version of it, and, she lives. And I feel like him working together with Sonic to get Sage to live, I feel like is more satisfying to me, and I think, Sage gets more character dialogue with the others. I just think it works better. And yeah, while the story of Frontiers isn't anything crazy, I just think it is a story that feels very calm, feels very relaxed, and I think you still get Sonic's moments. Obviously, Sonic, big part of the series. You get a new version of him, which is like the sort of modern usage of Sonic where, he is sassy and makes his jabs, but you could tell he is in a dire situation, whether it's him taking in the cyber corruption, but he is still, quipping his jokes, making his comments, but he's still interesting, and he's still interested in what's going on between himself, and everyone around him. When he's talking to Tails, being like, hey, it's okay if you want to grow up, when he's talking to Amy, be like, I'll help you, in whatever journey you have, or Knuckles being like, hey man, we're best friends, live a little, stuff like that, where, he is growing, he's trying to help Sage still, he'll still work with Eggman, and even up again to the DLC where he is, using his smarts with Sage, to use the cyber corruption in order to get himself a new form. But we'll talk about that when we get to gameplay. But overall, the story of the Ancients being this ancient civilization and how it ties into them being on the Starfall Islands, the character conversations, everything. I thought the story was great. It's not one that's gripping, really, where you're like, I need to know what happens next, but it is one that is just nice, especially for fans. I feel like non-fans might not care about it as much, really. Like, I think if you don't care about Sonic lore or characters like that, you might be like, okay, this is cute, they're having cute moments, this is nice, but you might not care that much about the overall story, because there's a really one, it really is, you get on the island, you talk to the characters, you have Sage tell you, hey, don't do this, and then you get to the Titan battles, so if you're not interested in those individual conversations, then the story might not be for you, but overall, I had a great time with it. Now let's talk about obviously a massive part of this game, and that is gameplay, right? What is the gameplay of Sonic Frontiers 1 year later? Well, first of all, there's different aspects to it. Let's talk about the gameplay loop, right? What is it that you're doing in the game? Well, typically the gameplay loop is you're on an island, right? There's 5 islands in the game. You're on the island. The objective is to get the Chaos Emeralds. To get the Chaos Emeralds, right, you have to fight these bosses or enemies in the environment, get these portal gears, and you use the portal gears to go to cyberspace levels, which are like, the boost levels we've come to expect. And in the boost levels, you get these keys that help you open up the Chaos Emeralds. And to open up the map, you need to do challenges on the island. So it'll be little activities like, it'll be like go up this grind rail, do a speedrun challenge throughout the island, walk on these platforms really quickly, like all the, little things that open up the map. And that's sort of your gameplay loop. And honestly, I found the gameplay loop dynamic and fun, to be honest with you. I think, for example, if we're going island by island, they all pretty much have a lot of these same challenges. They kind of make them harder throughout. There's like a jump rope one. There's one again where you're moving left and right on these pads that are lighting up on the ground. But I think the reward of unlocking more and more of the island, to me, is so satisfying, because when you unlock the map, you unlock more grind wheels and more things to move around in the environment. And then by the time like you're sort of done with it, the island feels like such a great playground, where you could go around, move, and all that stuff. And obviously, a big part of that is movement, right? How does Sonic move and feel? Now, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this. I'm going to give you mine, right? How I feel about the movement, not how, how this person feels. How today I feel about this movement. I love it. I think you have to mess with it a little bit to get it to where you want it to be. In fact, you got to press, the menu, and you got to move some sliders. I usually put, all the speed stuff all the way up. I put like the deceleration rate, I think, to like down. That way, when he's going fast, he's like going into the air, and he has more momentum-based physics now. So I feel like when you're moving around the environment, I feel like it's way more fun now, because especially if you've unlocked the spin dash, even if you don't have the spin dash, you can, jump up or off a ramp or something. Sonic just goes flying way more. And in some ways, it kind of breaks the flow of the game, because it feels like you're sort of, flying to the next objectives you need to go to. But at the same time, it's fun. Like, I cannot deny moving around the environment is fun. Using the spin dash that you can unlock is hella fun. Dude, when you have the spin dash, it's like a game changer. Spin dashing to jump to higher grind rails and then boosting on the grind rail and jumping off to get to another platform, I think is so much fun. I love the movement with Sonic overall, especially like where the game's at today. Like, I just think it's fun to play. I like his boost. I like his movement. I don't think it's that useful to use the side loop move in the environment, but I think movement-wise overall, I genuinely love it. And I've gone back to play other Sonic games like Generations or Unleashed stuff, but like, I wonder how those gameplay things would feel in an open environment. I feel like they did a pretty good job making Sonic fun to play in the open zone, right? I do think when we get to cyberspace levels where, Sonic is back into the more boost era type gameplay, then that gameplay, that's where it feels like it's weird. Like, sometimes there'll be moments where I use that spin dash to go higher up. It feels like I'm breaking the level, but not in a good way necessarily. Or there's times where you're going too fast forward. There's times where it's too stiff. I don't know. I feel like in cyberspace, it did not work as well, even though those levels are hella fun by themselves. I want to talk about cyberspace, obviously. But I think overall, movement-wise, they did a great job, especially, now that we're a year down the line and we have extra movement options and more challenges for those movement options. I just think this is one of my favorite gameplay styles now in terms of moving Sonic since, like, I don't know, maybe early boost era or even, adventure era, to be honest with you. Another massive part of the gameplay in this game is the combat, right? There's a combat system in this game, which I think the first time since Sonic Unleashed, and I love this, dude. I've always said I love the combat because it just looks cool, and I think that still stands to this day with the DLC, with the updates, is I think the combat to me just looks cool. I like doing cross slash. It's a sick looking move. I like doing the spin. It's a sick looking move. I like doing the stomp. I like doing, the zigzag hit. I love the fighting and combat of the game, even if it is, pretty much every move is kind of doing the same thing. I love the quick side loop, and then getting an enemy into the air and then stomping on. Like, I feel like there's a lot of cool options. Now, do you really need to use any of those options as much as I'd like to? No, you could, if you wanted to, you could spend an entire fight using, punch, 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 stomp, punch, 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 stomp, right? So objectively, I think combat in a lot of ways doesn't put you in many scenarios where you gotta use all your options, but I think having those options is is really fun. And I think as long as Sonic feels flashy and cool, I think that is the more important aspect of this. But again, obviously a big issue with the game is the infinite parry, which, you know, they kind of solve in the new update, but not really because it's in a particular situation. But the infinite parry is definitely an issue because you could just hold that thing forever. I do wish it felt, you know, like you had to earn it a little bit, but hey, you know, it's there. I think most people don't just hold it forever. I mean, some people do, but I do think I just like having the parry. I like having specials that counter enemies. The combat to me is fun. It always has been, always will be, and I cannot wait to see how much they expand. It's what I wanted Sonic Unleashed to be back in the day. My issue with Unleashed combat is just like he's just a slow moving character, which is weird for Sonic, you know. So for me, this combat being dynamic and fun, if they make it more challenging and crazy, you know, in later games, it's gonna be fire. I cannot wait to see how much they continue with it. But overall movement, gameplay wise, you know, how Sonic plays, I love it so much. Now, I was talking about island challenges, and I think throughout the islands, I was thinking, what's my favorite island? I think it might either be New Uranos or Ares Island. I really do love Ares Island because, first of all, it's just like, you know, it's a nice looking desert. There's Oasis there. It's got obviously some banger cyberspace levels, but there's cool movement options there from how you can jump on rails. There's these like unique structures that are like off the island that you have like these crazy fun platforming challenges that I really love. Like when I think about Chaos Island, as much as I love it like aesthetically, the amount of 2D sections is frustrating. The amount of times I don't know which island I have to go to or how to get to it really is the most frustrating. And I think the only frustrating island to me where I just sometimes didn't know where to go, and that's me, you know, that's someone who's been playing the game since launch a million times. I still get lost on Chaos Island many times, you know, but I think Kronos is pretty awesome for what it does. It's the most simple and most fun, and I think, like I said, Ares is my favorite. Chaos, again, has a lot of issues, and for some reason it's very 2D for no reason. And then you get to Rhea, which is kind of just a climbing one, and I think that one look-wise is beautiful, and I think the challenges are fun. And then you have Uranos 1 and 2, I guess, and Uranos 1 is cool, but I think Uranos 2 is much, much better, you know, where you have way more verticality, obviously, to, you know, not a tone, but like to factor the fact that you have multiple playable characters in New Uranos. And I think overall New Uranos is also like top 3 islands in the game for me for sure. And of course, a big part of this game is cyberspace, right? There are these levels called the cyberspace levels that we've all kind of grown to know and love, and honestly, as I've been playing them throughout the year, I love these levels so much, man. Especially with, you know, the new spin dash that you unlock later on by doing Coco challenges. I think overall cyberspace has become one of my favorite parts of the game. It's one of the parts, to be honest, I jump into the most, because I feel like a lot of times, like when I play the game, I'm like, okay, I don't want to necessarily restart an entire island, but I just want to play a little bit, and I'll just jump into cyberspace. I'll go into arcade mode or cyberspace challenge, and I'll just play them, you know. And I love doing, you know, I love playing, you know, the levels like 1-2 or 4-3 or what's called 3-5, or, you know, all the different levels in a lot of different ways are so much fun throughout the game. And in fact, obviously with the new update, we got a new set of cyberspace levels, and for me, those ones set the bar so high. The new cyberspace levels, the I think 4-A through B, C, E, D, E, F, G. I think those are the best ones in the game because they do what I think the entire game wanted to do, which is like unique creative ideas on each of the levels. So like there's one cyberspace level in there that has like a rev system where the longer Sonic runs, the more faster he goes. He almost works like a car. There's one cyberspace level in there that gives you these rocket boosts that are crazy. There's some where you're doing tails chases against the Shadow Tails. Like they change up the objectives a lot, and they're crazy with how many paths they have, you know. And whereas the cyberspace levels in the main game, a lot of them, as you know, are like sort of reskins with some alternate areas, and I think, you know, and a lot of these are just very straightforward, fun platforming levels. But the ones on the new Uranos stand out so much, and in fact they almost stand out like a sore thumb differently to the others because they're like so different, they're so wide, I think are so much fun. But overall, I think cyberspace is a great idea. I do want them to continue that as much as I'd love if everything was, you know, fun on the island itself to warrant not needing cyberspace. I love the idea of having these levels that are, you know, keep the boost type formula, but I want new environments, you know. Don't do the chemical plant, Green Hill, Sky Sanctuary areas again. As much as I like those areas, you know, I think they understand now that it all has to be like, you know, kind of like that new highway level, you know, just have brand new and original ones throughout the whole thing, and I think that'll go a long way for something bigger and better. But again, overall, I I still love Cyberspace to this day. Now let's talk about enemies and boss fights, right? Throughout the game, there's some little enemies you fight. There's some cool island bosses you fight. You know, there's enemies like Ninja. There's a shark, you know, boss fight. There's Azure. There's Squid, who's iconic. I think those boss fights are really cool. They do a good job of actually having them feel all very different, and I just love those fights. But obviously, when it comes to this game, we have something extremely peak, which is the Titan boss battles. Your reward for beating the island. And oh my god, as you know, these have become sort of iconic to Sonic now. Obviously, beyond the music, I think they are the most grandiose battles, and each of them could stand as a final boss in any Sonic game. You know, and when you get to Giganto, obviously you have the iconic moment of Turn Super Sonic fighting Giganto. And I think what I adore about these Titan battles is I've done them so many times now, right? And every time I do them, I feel hype. I never feel bored going back, obviously, except for, you know, the old Supreme. I just like, I can go back to fight Wyvern as many times as possible, and it is still cool seeing Sonic, you know, grab him and toss him into a mountain. It is still so cool to, you know, spin quick side loop Giganto, have him in the air, and then mash him downwards. You know, it's still so hype to see Sonic grab the sword against, you know, Knight and kill him. You know, and while these fights aren't crazy difficult, a lot of times, you know, you can do your parry and just hit, parry, hit. I still think they are so much hype from the music and how Super Sonic feels powerful again that, like, I just love it. And obviously, leading into the Uranos Island, original Uranos was such a disappointing finale. I think Supreme was so lame, and I think while the end is, you know, aesthetically a really incredible fight, right, and, you know, even music wise and tone wise, I think the new Uranos obviously is like the coolest shit ever and is the peak of the game. They finally made it so that the game feels like it really ended with Super Sonic peaking. You know, he turns into Super Sonic 2. He's doing crazy slashes. He's kicking. He's punching the Titan into the air. He's getting shot from the cannon. He's got fangs. He's going insane, and it is some of the coolest shit ever. And I think that has to be commended. The boss battles in this game have become iconic to the series and have set a bar now. You know, now there's a bar, and I think they're gonna have a tough time topping these. They're gonna have to do bigger battles. They're gonna have to do rival battles, and I think it's gonna be definitely a challenge for them, but I think they can do it because, again, I love the Super Sonic battles in this game so much, but I can see how much crazy that final new battle made me realize how much crazier things can get. So overall, boss fights, man, I am still so happy with. And of course, throughout the year, we got some extra content. For example, starting with challenge mode, there is a boss rush mode and a cyberspace challenge mode. So boss rush mode has you fighting all the enemies from different islands in the game, and it's really challenging. Actually, you have to make sure you are going in correct timings for stuff. I think, you know, that challenge is very difficult but very satisfying to go through. And cyberspace challenges has you going through every cyberspace level in a row in that island and trying to get an overall good rank on. And I think this was such a great addition to the game. I think this is something that people wanted, and I think it's a good way for people that just want a challenge, an extra thing to go in there. And in fact, the reward for it is pretty good. I think for beating cyberspace, correct me if I'm wrong, you get like this electric boost aura. It's the one you get for getting 999 rings where you're super fast, and it doesn't affect the main game too much, but you do unlock extreme mode through doing that, and you get that boost throughout cyberspace levels in the main game, which is cool because then they eventually also added New Game Plus, which is something people really wanted, and I'm super happy about that. And another cool addition I thought through the DLC was jukebox mode. So not only can you go around the islands changing the songs, but they made it into a collectathon. Each island you could go around, collect different songs, and they made it like a fun thing, you know, where a lot of them were just placed in cool places that you could go and just find. So it's cool now that, you know, when you buy the game or play it for the first time, you have something new to collect in the environment. They also added a photo mode, which I think to this day the photo mode is still pretty lame to me because it is very bare bones. It is the most basic, like, you know, you can spin the camera and then you could have some filters, but that's it. I wish they had stuff, you know, like lighting sources or being able to change the weather to night and day, or zoom in more, or zoom out more, change different poses for Sonic. Like, it's like, I feel like I would have loved the photo mode so much more if they did something like that, you know, but they went with the bare bones with it. So I end up using it sometimes, but I've seen people take incredible shots with it, and I'm happy it's there. Yeah, I'd rather it be there than not. We also had the Sonic birthday update, which I thought was is really cool. You know, it adds a new song to the game. It, you know, changes the filter aesthetic. You know, it's got some cool, you know, it just, the environments look more fun and different. So it's nothing crazy, but like, you know, the sky looks like it's made of rings. I think, you know, there's even skies that look like Sonic clouds. There's just all the Cocos look different. The gang has little party hats. It's just a fun little aesthetic thing, but it's nothing crazy. I feel like it's something you mess with for a little bit, then you turn off. But two additions to the base game from the updates were island challenges as well as the Coco challenges. So first of all, the island challenges are how you get the spin dash. They are these, you know, speedrun challenges that you do throughout each island, which I think are so cool. You know, so basically what you have to do is you got to get a certain amount of points throughout a time limit. So you do that by collecting these glowing lights that are around to up your combo score. Then you have to fight some enemies to up your combo score, and you just have to, you know, run around, do some cool things, and make sure you get an S rank. And each island has a bunch of them. So, dude, if I was playing this game for the first time, you know, I would have loved jumping into these. You know, obviously I've done them all and I unlocked the spin dash, and it's a cool reward for doing the spin dash. And in fact, difficulty affected. If you're playing the game on easy, they're easier. If you're playing on hard, harder. So I think having those throughout the game was actually a really, really good and smart addition. It's a fun addition too. Like I love having more things to do on the island, just like they added the new Coco challenges, which I think was also dope to have on the island. So now each island has these Coco challenges, right? So they have, you know, Coco Challenge 1, where you can just go on these extra platforming challenges. So every island now has like new platforming challenges through all of them, and I think they are very difficult, but they are very satisfying. And I know it almost sucks that, you know, the new Uranus doesn't have them. But those are the major updates that were given in the DLC. Obviously, I just recently talked about New Uranus, which it's weird. Like, I wonder if an average person that's playing this game, are they gonna go in that portal before doing the old Uranus, or are they just gonna go in that portal? You know, I think it's a very weird thing that I don't know if they want you to play original then that, or just do that. Like, for me, it would just make sense that if you got to Uranus, you would go to New Uranus, because I feel like that's truly how they wanted the game's journey to end. I feel like I have to talk about those separately almost, you know. So with old Uranus, it played the same way in a sense, where you just had to go collect Chaos Emeralds, you did some fun challenges, and you did some Cyberspace levels, which I think were fantastic. Those ones are really good. Mainly you talking a lot to Sage, Sonic and Sage talking. But in New Uranus, you get to play as Tails, Amy, and Knuckles. And I've talked about it recently in my review, but I will still talk about it here. I love that they are here. I love that they are playable. I do think that they are a little jank. I do wish, you know, that the pop-ins weren't awful. I wish they had a reason to fight in combat, because the only enemies on the island are bosses that are incredibly frustrating to fight at that point that you don't want to. But movement-wise, it's great. I mean, I'm happy to be back playing as Knuckles. I'm happy to be back playing as Amy. Happy to be back playing as Tails. But I just wish, why couldn't I unlock playing them throughout the different islands, man? Like, how come when I beat this DLC, I just can't go on any island playing as these characters, man? Like, I've done everything, you know. Give me a reward for doing everything. I feel like it's such a missed opportunity that they did not let me do that. But alas, I'm glad they're there. And then you get, you know, the Master Trials, which is fighting all the Titans in a row. But, you know, Sonic is still treated as the main character. Well, I think he's still the best content in even New Uranus. So for the most part, very happy with how Sonic landed. And of course, you get to the final battle with the new version of the end. And, you know, I am happy they didn't remove the original, because the original, the end fight, has, you know, this creepy speech that people have very much latched onto and find terrifying. But I do love the new end, you know, that comes down to the earth and, you know, like takes over Supreme and is trying to take over its soul. And I think the ending of the new one is so much more hype with Sonic. It's so much more emotional, you know. It still has the gang. So Sonic Frontiers 1 year later, right? How do I feel about it? I adore this game. I think this game throughout is so, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it has issues, right? It's not perfect. You know, I talked about some of my issues with the island or some of the new characters or some of the things in there, but I cannot help but find that this is just my favorite Sonic game, right? Not because I just have an attachment to it, because it's one that I covered from start to finish and I just have played so much, but I just think, you know, it has so much of what I want from the series forever. You know, it has the highest highs of the series by far with the boss battles. You know, it has the highest highs, you know, in terms of just like combat even. It's got such fun gameplay. It's a game that I could just open and run around the environment and have a good time with. It's a game that overall over the last year has just become an objectively better game. And while I don't think it's perfect, I still think it's an awesome, lovely game. I think it's like really great. I love it so much. But for me, it's like, it just is my favorite Sonic game, just because I spent the most time with it. Its highs are my favorite highs in the series, and it's just incredible. And I think of games like Sonic Adventure 2, right, or Sonic Unleashed, which are games that are so flawed as well, right? With Sonic Adventure 2, going back to some of those, the levels of the gang don't feel as great, or some of the levels are a little jank. Or even Sonic Adventure 1, some of the other campaigns don't hold up as much as Sonic's, and each of those games have issues, but it's their spirit that stands out the most. I think the spirit of Sonic Frontiers being this sort of love letter from the Sonic team, trying to bring Sonic back to the forefront, is something that I commend so much, and it's something that I felt throughout playing the game. Whether throughout the year, from the base game to the DLC to everything, it's just, I could tell Sonic team wanted to make something special here, and I could tell they were held back a little bit, because of their budget, how much time they have. But I do think we are in a crazy place now where Sonic team is going to make something crazy next. I really do, and this isn't one of those moments where I'm excusing them, being like, why do we have to wait for the next thing? I don't think we had to wait. I think we got a fantastic game here that has a lot of issues due to limitations, but I still think overall is such a fun time, and its highs are my favorite. Obviously, I didn't even get to talk about the music, which I think the music is some of the best in the franchise, from the island movements to the cyberspace themes to the Titan themes that have become iconic. Like, it just has things that are just so iconic, and I'm so happy with Sonic Frontiers 1 year later, and it is now my favorite Sonic game overall. But guys, let me know what you think about Sonic Frontiers 1 year later. What are your thoughts on everything, from the base game to updates, DLC, everything? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you feel, and of course, I'll see you all next time. Peace out. I love you.